Your work is primarily focused, Jenny, on the toxic achievement and grind culture aimed at children and teenagers and young adults, and how it's impacting their mental health and how it's backfiring and not working, but it relates to all of us. And so here's what we're going to do in this conversation. Number one, I want you to unpack your research for us, okay? And then what I want to do is I want to go to the deeper conversation that relates to all of us, which is the root cause of toxic achievement. We can all feel it. It's never enough. But how the hell did we get here?
What's happening today is that parents are becoming, in the words of researchers, social conduits. They are trying to prepare their kids for this uncertain competitive future. And it comes out in our parenting. We tend to become more controlling. We tend to become more perfectionistic in what we're demanding of our kids. And again, not to blame parents.
But why not? Hold on a second. I blame myself, and I don't have a problem with it. And by the way, this is so relevant to me as a boss, too. To take responsibility for how you take the pressure that you feel and pass it on to somebody else, you have a huge impact in other people's lives based on how you process and handle the pressure that you feel. Whether you just jam that down your kids or your colleagues or your friends' throats because you can't tolerate it yourself. And so I think there is a massive role that parents play that they need to wake up and start taking responsibility for.
I don't disagree with you. And I agree that it's blame is the word that I'm tired of. I guess what I'm trying to tell parents is to zoom out and put into context the anxieties and the fears that they are feeling so that they can see them. It's not personal. Every parent is feeling this. I mean, as I mentioned, I worked with a Harvard researcher to conduct a first of its kind parenting survey. And we were hoping to get a sample size of 1,000 parents. And within a few days, 6,500 parents had filled it out. And there were these universal themes that parents today are feeling. I feel responsible for my children's achievement and success.
Does that concern you?
I mean, it concerns me because that's when our parenting behaviors are not necessarily conducive to raising healthy achievers. But when I was in the 70s, when I was growing up in the 70s and 80s, like my parents, yes, they would buy me a tennis racket or a pair of running shoes, but they didn't feel like they had to push me to the front of the pack. And I think today parents feel that responsibility. But here's one other thing I want to say. Not only do they feel that responsibility, they think other people are judging them on that as well. I asked how many agreed with others think that my children's academic success is a reflection of my parenting. 83% of parents agreed with that statement. So it's not only that we feel responsible for creating these sort of safety nets for our kids and making sure they're successful in the future, but other people are judging us.
In fact, this is the first time in U.S. history that kids are worse off than their parents. Worse health outcomes, life expectancy, higher anxiety rates, higher depression rates, worried about the environment, the changing job market. It's no wonder everybody is stressed out.
I asked parents, so we're talking about the stress that they're feeling in their homes, right? I said, how many of you agree or disagree with this statement on a scale from 1 to 4? I wish today's childhood was less stressful for my kids. 87% of parents agreed with that statement.
I want to know, who are the 13 that didn't? I mean, my God. Maybe they read the question wrong.
At the end of the survey, I asked parents if they would be willing to be interviewed, and hundreds of parents reached out. And so I traveled the country listening to these stories over and over again. It was the same story. The sleepless nights by their kids in order to cram in all the AP classes, the weekends spent at soccer tournaments, missing family gatherings, missing birthday parties. The mother in Alaska told me her kids never understood what a Thanksgiving meal really was because they were always on the road going to soccer tournaments on Thanksgiving. So I guess what surprised me the most was how universal this feeling was and how honest parents were about it.
That makes a lot of sense. And I can't wait to hear what we need to focus on in order to get back to the kind of life where you are focused on healthy achievement instead of being driven to the race to nowhere based on this toxic grind culture and this pressure that we feel. I mean, when I explained that story about how my friend said something, and next thing you know, I like swoop in and start pressuring my son because now I'm all freaked out and I'm buying into this. That's exactly what we're talking about. That there's the ability to strive and to want to achieve something and to do it in a very healthy way rather than amping up the pressure and the stress that we feel. So, how do we get there?
Yeah. At the root of all this suffering is an unmet need to feel like we matter for who we are at our core.
Seriously? I mean, I thought we were talking about achievement. Now you're talking about mattering. I mean, that's kind of a squishy topic. You're going to have to break this down for me and for the person listening because you're talking about doing as the problem, but somehow being, and feeling like you matter. How are we going to get there?
Mattering is a core need that we all have to feel important, significant, and like we make an impact on the world. To matter, we need to feel valued for who we are at our core by our families, by our colleagues, by our friends, and our larger community. And importantly, we need to be depended on. We need to be relied on to add value back to our families, to our colleagues or friends, and to our larger communities. When we experience that feeling valued and adding value, that's when we have a high level of mattering. And mattering acts like a protective shield against anxiety, depression. It's not that the students that I met who experienced this high level of mattering, who were striving in healthy ways, it didn't mean they didn't have failures or setbacks. But what mattering did is it acted like a buoy. It helped to lift them up. When they had a setback, when they felt like they were failing, it wasn't an indictment of their worth. So, as part of my research, I went in search of the healthy strivers. I wanted to know what, if anything, they had in common. What was home life like for them? What was their relationship like with their peers? What was school like? And I found about 15 or so common threads that these healthy achievers had in common. And as I was looking for a framework to present my findings, I came across the psychological construct of mattering. It's been around since the 1980s. It was first conceptualized by Morris Rosenberg, who brought us the idea of self-esteem. And what he found in the 80s was that students who felt a healthy level of self-esteem felt like they mattered, that they were important to their parents and known for who they were at their core. Their value wasn't contingent on their performance or what they looked like or what team they made. And they were also depended on to add meaningful value back to their families, to their friends, to their communities. They experienced this high level of mattering because they had social proof. They believed at their core that they were valued, and then they saw it in action with how they were adding value to those around them. So when they stumbled, when they had a setback, they didn't feel like it was an indictment of their worth. They were able to bounce back. The kids who seemed to be suffering the most were kids who felt like they only mattered when, that their mattering was contingent, their value was contingent. The other group that seemed to be suffering the most were kids who felt like they were valued at home, but no one ever depended or relied on them. So what happens is they lacked social proof that they mattered.
This is the exact same thing that all the research has proven to be true about people who succeed at work and people who don't. That there is this underlying theme of feeling like you matter to the people that you work with, to the person that is your manager, and that your contributions are important. And so it makes sense to me that this would be the exact same construct that would either make a student feel invisible or that they mattered, or make a student feel like I only get the attention I need at home when my grades are amazing and my parents have something to brag about. I wanted to pull this apart just a little bit more because I immediately latched on to you saying, if you don't have social proof, that can plummet your self-esteem. What do you mean by social proof?
Right. So social proof tells a student or an adult that you are important in this world. You make a positive impact on the world around you. The idea of mattering, whether it's for students or for people at work or for people who are retired, mattering matters throughout life. Young, old, rich, poor. There is what researchers call an instinct to matter. So beyond food and shelter, it is the instinct to matter that researchers say drive all of human behavior for better or for worse. When we feel like we matter, we show up in the world in positive ways, we achieve in healthy ways. We want to give back to society. We want to be a good neighbor. We want to be a great colleague. We want to lift people up because we have this deep core of mattering. When we feel like we don't matter, when we are made to feel marginalized, we can either fall inward, get depressed, anxious, lean on substances to feed our loneliness, or we can act out. So a school shooter is, among the most tragic examples. You don't think I matter? I'll show you I matter. This is a universal need that we all have, and we are living in a society where it is going unmet for too many people. And that, to me, is the driving force behind the loneliness we're feeling, the anxiety that we think we're not worthy, the depression when we feel invisible, when no one cares about us, or when we think no one cares about us.
So it sounds like we all have this innate, important, critical need to feel as though we matter in the world at large or to other people, that we have something to contribute. That is the core issue that most of us are struggling with. And the symptoms that it's not being met are things like loneliness, despair, feeling angry, anxiety. All of those things rise to the surface when this core need isn't met. I really want to dig deeper and deeper into this, because I think when our audience, which is now in 194 countries, when people write in, I have no friends, I don't know what to do with my life, I believe this is an issue that this person has no social proof that they matter. And so can you give us examples of what is social proof that you matter?
In a corporate event, a 30-year-old raised his hand and he said, sometimes I feel like I don't matter. Is there a mantra I could say to myself to help me put myself in that mattering mindset? And I said, no. I said, here's what you need to do. You need to go down to your cafeteria and you need to smile at the cafeteria lady who always smiles at you and asks you how your day is going. And you need to say to her, these days have been a little rough for me, but knowing that you're going to be there greeting me with this delicious meal, making me smile, you brighten my day every day. I just want you to know that. Unlocking the mattering in other people feeds our own mattering. So instead of a mantra, better to go out and be kind and, caring to the person at the drugstore who's ringing up, who's probably being attacked day in and day out for not moving fast enough, or not, and just thanking them, just thanking everyday people, thanking a friend who's been there for you, just a quick text. It mattering is felt, in big moments, right? When we are celebrating a milestone birthday and somebody gives a toast to us and tells us why we matter to them. But it's also found in little everyday moments too. And those little moments of mattering or not mattering pile up. I just remember distinctly, I was at an office party with my husband, and a guy was talking to me, but on his phone and texting the entire conversation. And I thought to myself, wow, I really don't matter here. I really don't matter to this guy. He wasn't being rude to me. He was just showing me, yeah, you don't matter as much as this phone. So when our kids come up to talk to us and we're scrolling or we're doing a work email, they can be getting those small signals of not mattering, like I got at that office party.
You recommend when kids come home from school that there's one question that you ask that shows that you matter. What is that question?
I lead with lunch.
What does that mean?
What I used to do before researching this book is my kids would come home and I'd be, thinking, how'd you do on the Spanish quiz? How'd it go on your report today? And what I realized in doing the research was that the signal I was sending my kids, one was that achievement mattered. Two, this is what I'd been thinking about all day while they were at
Mm.
school. And so instead, now when they walk in the door, I lead with lunch. I ask them, "What'd you have for lunch today?" And I got that idea because my grandmother, in every conversation I would have with her, she's since passed away, it would always be, "What did you have for lunch?" It was, I care about you. I care about your nourishment. I care about things that have nothing to do with how you look, what grade you got, how your career is going. I just care about you.
You got to get this woman on your podcast. I'm tracking her down and we're getting Jenny Wallace on the show. And I just want you to get ready because we're not only going to talk about how you break free from the grind culture and how you can get your life and your peace of mind and your control back.